Thanks everybody for coming. This is Joanna. She's our Hutton Scholar for 2012. The Hutton Scholar is chosen by the American Fisheries Society. We serve as hosts. We've been doing this for a number of years, and so we're excited to have her here. This is her kind of culminating project, looking at lumpsuckers and the importance of the nearshore habitat in eel grass. So have at it. The floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Joanna Lynch, as you said, and I spent my summer here, pretty much all of it. And so I did a project called The Life and Home of Pacific Spiny Lumpsuckers. Pacific spiny lumpsuckers are also known by their scientific name, Hemicrotremys pholibus. They're a part of the lumpfish family, which means that their pelvic fin is modified with a large adhesive suction disc, which allows them to hold on to plants and rocks. And here, it's a video that I kind of stole from Victoria High School. This is the Pacific spiny lumpsucker, and I was kind of immediately drawn to it because it's really, really cute. And this inshore fish can be found off the coast of Washington, especially Puget Sound. It's solitary and really small. It can be up to 5 inches, but normally we find that they're more about the size of a ping pong ball. They have no scales and are instead covered with plate-like structures that have these spiny webs called tuber folds that give them their name. And females generally have more than males. They only live for about 1 to 3 years and are inefficient swimmers, both because of their body shape and because they don't have a swim bladder. And this makes them easy prey to the larger fish, such as Pacific cod, that feed on them. At the Sail Aquarium, you can find Pacific spiny lumpsuckers in our Puget Sound fish exhibit in this right there. They don't really need that much space because, as I said, they're pretty inefficient swimmers. How they reproduce in the wild, they would move to warmer, shallower waters to spawn from July to October. The females will lay their eggs in a sheltered area in perhaps in a rock or maybe a barnacle, and then the males will come, fertilize the eggs, and guard them until they hatch. They'll keep predators away, but also air them to give them lots of oxygen so the eggs can develop. When our spiny lumpsuckers lay eggs and we decide that we want to raise them from eggs to adults, we undergo the process of larval rearing. This is important because then we don't have to take our lumpsuckers from the wild, so there's no stress in the environment. We can release them back into the wild and help them stay with native populations. And we also encourage genetic diversity within the population. To examine the history of larval rearing at the Sail Aquarium, I'm referring to a Drum and Croker article published in January 2010 by Angela Smith, and it details how we started rearing in 1978, when at the time eggs and larvae hadn't really been hadn't been published on, and there wasn't that much knowledge out there available. And during this time, we saw the highest mortality rates when they were transferred from their net hens to the actual rectangular larval rearing tubs, and also when their diet was switched from brine shrimp monopolii to adult brine shrimp. We also compared wild-caught Pacific spiny lumpsuckers with our captive reared counterparts and saw that the wild ones were typically larger, and also our captive reared ones did not reach sexual maturity. In 1995, we picked the project back up again when over 300 juvenile Pacific spiny lumpsuckers were reared. Their diet changes, we enriched their diet with a fatty acid supplement, so we soaked the brine shrimp in that to help them gain the size they needed to be the same size as their wild counterparts. And then 6 months later, we released 226 Pacific spiny lumpsuckers in the San Juan Islands. In 2006, despite the challenge of higher Puget Sound temperatures that made the dissolved oxygen content lower, we hatched 500 more larval Pacific spiny lumpsuckers. We had a more varied diet this time, including freeze-dried copepod, frozen mysids, chopped phosphid, and also herring, soaked in the bird vitamin supplement Nectin S. And this graph taken from the Drum and Croker article shows how, after we began off adding Nectin S to their food, we did see a change in their size and an increase in their size. The 2006 trials were successful in raising a sexually mature group of captive Pacific spiny lumpsuckers, which then led to a second generation, the first that we had from captive bred parents. And the second generation, their eggs were never fertilized, which we thought maybe because of a cue that prevents inbreeding within a population. However, further research is still needed on that to confirm it. Today, Angie DCO is starting the project again. She uses the 2006 guidelines. The only addition that she made was using a critter keeper because she's raising a much smaller group. And so this critter keeper that you see in the plastic tub within the larger blue rearing tub allows her to keep them in contained space, but then the side nets also allow water flow to come through. You can see these cute little blobs, sort of, are the first batch of lumpsuckers that hatched in spring after incubating for about 6 weeks. 31 hatched originally and 26 survived today. And all the lumpsuckers that are surviving today are from the first batch. You can kind of see the little guys and their eyeballs that are huge. There was a second and a third batch that all did eye up and hatch, but then they all died off. The second batch more slowly and the third all at once. A fourth and fifth batch never even eyed up and hatched. Angie speculates this could be because as more eggs were laid, the parents were unable to lay viable eggs. Although that's a speculation, she's not 100% sure. And here is a video of them being fed, you'll see. They are fed 3 times a day, and their diet started out as brine shrimp knocklag, moving to rotifers, then up to older and older brine shrimp, and right now they're being fed chopped up mice shrimp from an eyedropper. So you can see their size in relation to the eyedropper. It is super tiny. And they'll actually come to the surface and feed. I promise it's really cute. You can only kind of tell. So they're fed and vacuumed 3 times a day. These are some of the certified lumpsuckers that we currently have on display. And once our juveniles are big enough, some of them will go into this display tank, and other ones will either go to other aquariums or be released because we can't house all of them here. But this brings me to their habitat because this really looks nothing like the blue larval rearing tubs that they're in today. In the wild, they need some place that they can hold on with their pelvic fin to be stable, and they also need some place that will protect them from predators because they can't swim away on their own. And eel grass beds provide both of these to allow them to survive, and that's the place you find them the most. Eel grass is known as Astera marina. It's a flowering plant that has adapted to live underwater. It roots in shallow waters, only about up to 10 meters in sand or mud. And there's currently about 53,000 acres in Puget Sound, as you can see the distribution on the map. Eel grass is really important for a variety of reasons. One of the main ones being that it provides a habitat for lots and lots of different critters. There are some birds that rely on it, such as the blue heron for food. Salmon and herring use it as spawning and nursery grounds. Smaller organisms use the dense growth for protection. And crabs, all sorts of different invertebrates and ecologically important animals need it for a habitat. Eel grass beds also diminish erosion in an area because this is a picture of a root. And so when that goes in the soil, it holds the substrate, which then it won't erode. And also the leaves slow the currents, which encourage substrate and organic material to drop to the bottom. This then increases the water quality because there's less turbidity in the area because the substrate is on the ground, not being stirred up in the water. It's the base of lots of really important food webs. You can kind of see in this picture, the eelgrass is on the bottom. Not many animals directly feed on eelgrass. Eelgrass is a really rapidly growing plant, and so what it provides is the dead material from its leaves that is really important to the food webs. So then we have the detritus feeders that are then fed on by larger fish, and then the big carnivores on top that rely on the fish for their food. It also provides nutrients to other plants because the roots will pull nitrogen and phosphorus out of the soil and then put it into the water that then other plants can take it in. Human use, we have used it in the past with fuel, but we don't really get many commercial and economic gains from the plant. However, we are making a pretty big impact. Globally, we see that eelgrass is declining in both distribution and abundance. And so in Puget Sound, we've stepped up our monitoring because eelgrass is one of the main indicators of an estuary's health. It is one of the first plants to respond when a human change or natural change occurs. And so we can see it very quickly in its distribution and abundance, anything that's happening in our waters. Eelgrass are stressed by many things, boat disturbances such as anchorings, which pull it up, propellers do hurt it, but more importantly is light availability. It really needs light to be able to grow. And so shoreline development such as docks will shade it out, but also nitrogen loading, where more and more nitrogen from urban and suburban areas is put into the water. Then you see these phytoplankton blooms that will shield out the eelgrass before the blooms disappear and create the dead zone. Climate change is one of the big unknowns as far as eelgrass, as with many other things that climate change is affecting. A 2008 study said that eelgrass could not survive in the warmer waters, and that the only way that eelgrass would be able to survive is if we increase the diversity in the genes. On the other hand, a 2007 study published in UC Santa Cruz said that the increase in dissolved carbon dioxide in the water actually allowed eelgrass to increase in their flowering rate and productivity. They advised even eventually using direct injection of flue gas, which is created when fossil fuels are burned in an industrial environment, into declining areas to help them grow. Another study in our own waters from the University of Washington said that eelgrass could maybe serve in the future as a carbon dump. It will take in large amounts of carbon and not be harmed, so that it can stabilize our carbon cycle. But this is an emerging science, and so really we don't know the answer. Either way, we do know that eelgrass, we need more of it in our region. And so the Department of Natural Resources and Wildlife and different nonprofit groups have put together a 2020 goal. They hope to take our current 53,000 acres to more like 64,000 acres by 2020. As you can see, these green bars are the total amount of eelgrass, and the black bars are the margin of error. And so it's pretty, you can see the overall amount of eelgrass is actually pretty stable. Where we see the big problems are their small areas where it's completely disappearing. So even though that might not show up on an overall area, it's really impacting certain environments. And we really don't see any areas of eelgrass currently that are on their own expanding. So there are many things that we need to do to help increase our eelgrass. This really complicated flowchart kind of talks about what I've been saying, where we need to reduce our nutrient inputs so that we don't shade out the eelgrass with plankton blooms. We need to get rid of overwater structures and things that are shading it out. We need to remove dams, reduce boat disturbances, and then there's also direct restoration, going out to the areas that need it the most and actually seeding the plants, and also restoring the water quality. Hopefully if we follow those, then eventually we'll get the functional response you see on the end, which is having the increased growth and reproduction and size of the plants, so that this habitat will still be there for all the animals. The top couple of bullet points are actually the guidelines put out by the Department of Wildlife of what you can do. And it talks about not building docks over eel grass habitat, and be careful when you have propellers near eel grass and anchoring. But I don't own a boat, and I don't have to be building a dock anytime soon. So what I can actually do is I can volunteer to help monitor where eelgrass is and where it's declining and the abundance, and also where invasive species are coming in. You can volunteer at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. But also doing your part to keep our waters healthy will help eelgrass, and that you really can't go wrong. So just not using fertilizers that are going to the ocean. And hopefully if we follow these guidelines and each one do our part, we'll have lots of cute little certified lumpsuckers for years to go. I just want to thank my mentor Dave and Katie for all their help, and Angie who helped walk me through the process of the project, and everyone who helped with my project and has helped me out these last 8 weeks.